jumbled sentence. Okay, so here again, let's look at repeat phrases. So now the 6 sentences, let's go. Same strategy, apply the same strategy. What's the repeat phrase? What's the passage all about? Which sentence is giving us some sort of a foundation or a base? So repeat phrases, obviously financial integration, right? Financial integration, financial integration, financial integration. Is there anything else that is a repeat word? I also see volatility, output, higher output volatility. I see that as well. Financial integration, consumption volatility, volatile. Right? Anything else? Okay, output volatility, okay. So, in fact, these are the two, a lot of things that I see as a repeat. So, let's look at it. A says financial integration allows capital poor countries to diversify away from the narrow production bases that are often okay, again, this looks like a packed sentence with a lot of information. We don't know if it's our topic sentence. Let's see. B, if financial integration takes the form of heavy reliance on blah, blah, blah. Okay. C, in theory, the effects of financial integration on output volatility are ambiguous. Okay. This could make middle income develop. What is that? This can't be a topic sentence. At a more advanced stage of development, which means is there an earlier stage that has been spoken about? Right? Theory does have a strong prediction. However, so obviously there's something else that has been spoken about. Right? It almost seems like a concluding sentence. So, theory does have a strong prediction. However, so for me, it seems like there's something discussed about it earlier, which this is almost like a culminating sentence saying, you know, looking at all this, it seems like, yes, theory does have a strong prediction. However, that's how it seems like. So, for me, F doesn't seem like a topic sentence for that reason alone. Now, let's go back. We've already ruled out F, E and D, right? We'll have to choose between A, B and C. So, most of you are coming back and saying C, 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 C. So, let's look at C. C says, in theory, the effects of financial integration on output volatility are ambiguous. Ambiguous meaning unclear, right? Very confusing. Now, we'll have to look at sentences where, right? We'll have to look at sentences where we're saying, how is it that the effects of financial integration on output volatility are ambiguous? Are there any sentences supporting it, right? Or we need to look for connecting sentences. What can be connecting sentences? So I'm going to look at connecting sentences first before I get into the whole sequence. So we're going to start with C being our topic sentence given the situation. Right? Now let's look for connecting sentences. For example, if I look at the obvious sentence, which is D. D says this could make middle income developing countries more vulnerable to industry specific shocks and thereby lead to higher output volatility. That's one. So this seems like a positive thing, right? So they become more vulnerable to industry specific shocks. So they are able to kind of recognize it and they're not surprised by it and thereby lead to higher output volatility. So what is actually giving them that? And then I also have in another sentence, right? In B, if you see, it says, if financial integration takes the form of heavy reliance on external debt, it could expose these countries to world interest rate shocks, right? So which countries are they referring to? For me, it seems like they're referring to the middle income developing countries, right? So that's a connect there for me. So I'm going to connect, I'm saying B should follow D. Why? Because of this. These countries. Which countries are they referring to? The middle income developing countries in D. That's why B should follow D. That's one. That's one connect I have, right? I don't know if D has to follow C, but this is one connecting sentence. Okay, alright, so let's keep that in the parking lot. Any other connecting sentences that we can look at? Okay, now remember the first sentence, it said ambiguous. So if you look at A says, hey, financial integration allows capital poor countries to diversify away from their narrow production bases that are often agricultural or natural resource dependent, thereby reducing macroeconomic volatility. So here it reduces macroeconomic volatility, and then you have E saying at a more advanced stage of development, however, trade and financial integration could together allow for enhanced specialization. So these two are going in, kind of AE. So after, in fact, I would put this right under C, the topic sentence, because two conflicting things saying this is what financial integration does, right, to capital poor countries, reducing macroeconomic volatility. But on the other hand, at a more advanced stage of development, however, trade and same thing, financial integration, what does it do? Could together allow for enhanced specialization. So that's why probably it's kind of a little ambiguous. CAE, right? AE are connecting, yes. What is the only thing that we've left with? F. So theory does have a strong prediction. However, about the relationship between financial integration and consumption volatility, we don't know. Putting this all together, right? Ideally, I would throw F towards the end. The only reason why I put A as my topic sentence, because it's a very packed sentence with a lot of information. It's almost like expanding on something as a pretext. And the pretext is very clearly given to us in C. It is saying the effects of what does financial integration do in terms of output volatility. So both of them, they are integrating. So it's almost like it's introducing the effects of financial integration on output volatility. C is doing that and A is kind of expanding on that. So what does financial integration actually do? What effect does it have? It reduces macroeconomic volatility. And then at a more advanced stage of development, what does it do? It enhances specialization. So for me, C is introducing what can be the effects of financial integration on output volatility. It's kind of unclear, it's kind of confusing, but still A and E are expanding on that. This is what it does. On an advanced stage, this is what it does. And because it enhances specialization, right? So that this in D, I can link it to E. So if you integrate both the trade and financial integration, it will actually allow for enhanced specialization. If that happens, middle income developing countries, will be more vulnerable to industry specific shocks and thereby lead to higher output volatility. So I'm going to look at my final sequence as CAEDB and I'm going to throw F at the end simply for the fact, looking at all this, all of this is giving me information that theory does have a strong prediction, keeping in mind all the information that we've looked at earlier. However, about the relationship between financial integration and consumption volatility, I'm assuming there is something more to this paragraph, right? It looks like there's something more to this paragraph. So, is it an ideal closing sentence? If we just look at it, maybe, maybe not, but given the options that we have, I don't know where else to throw F. I'll put it at the end. And maybe there's some other sentences after this. We don't know the larger context, or at least I don't know the larger context. So I'm going to go with this as the sequence, CADBF. So hopefully, before I move on, I don't want to do a recap unless some of you have a doubt or an issue or you're not following. So I have only looked at connecting sentences, right, like AE and DB, and I've just tried to link it to the previous pairs. The only reason why I keep looking at it this way is, you guys are going with the word, theory and theory, right? But the topic sentence is not giving us any strong prediction at all, right? The topic sentence is only introducing us that this is what it is in theory, and it is introducing what could be. This is what we're going to be discussing in the passage, which is the effects of financial integration on output volatility, which is ambiguous at this point of time. So A and E expand on that, and we know that that's a connect anyway, right? Because what does it do? One, it reduces macroeconomic volatility. At a more advanced stage of development, what does it do? If we combine it together with trade, it enhances specialization. So if it enhances specialization, as a result of that, what's happening is middle income developing countries kind of more vulnerable to industry specific shocks. So they're aware of it. They are, susceptible to it. They almost look for it, and thereby leading to higher output volatility. And this middle income developing countries is made reference to again in B. If financial integration takes the form of heavy reliance on external debt, it could expose these countries, referring to middle income developing countries, to world interest rate shocks and thus to higher output volatility. See, look at this. Because of the enhanced specialization, one, they are becoming more vulnerable to industry specific shocks, and as a result, it's leading to higher output volatility. And then again, the same phrase is kind of repeated here in B, saying, let's imagine that financial integration is taking the form of heavy reliance on external debt. It could expose these countries, the middle income developing countries, to world interest rate shocks and thus to higher. So there's chances of that increasing a little more. to higher output volatility. See, the phrase is repeated, right? So that's why for me D and B is a connect. So C, A, E, D, B, and I'm just going to put F as a culmination saying theory does have a strong prediction looking at everything. Yeah? Looking at all the evidence that we have in the previous sentences. And then however about the relationship between the two segments that we're talking about, financial integration and consumption volatility, we don't know. And then it continues, I'm guessing, into whatever context. So my final sequence is C, A, E, D, B, F. I only want you to pay attention to, I'm literally using technical, strategies for this particular context. Looking at just repeat phrases, looking at connecting sentences, and then trying to, I think it's a complicated passage if you ask me, right? If you don't follow certain logical sequences, it's very difficult for you to come up with the sequence. Why can't D come after C? Because, like I said, C is not giving us any data. It is just introducing, saying, hey, the effects of this financial integration on output volatility is pretty ambiguous, is unclear, is confusing. So D is almost like a positive thing saying, there's no logical sense to connect D after C, because C is not giving us any sort of a meaty information like A and E. And that's why I would not advise you guys to, attempt this, simply because it's probably a higher end jumble sentence, and it can be misleading if you're not paying attention to these phrases or clues. That's exactly why you have the leverage to take a call. Right? I don't know if you've attended one of the sessions which Rohit took, where we, time and again, even we keep saying, just because there are 100 questions, doesn't mean you have to attempt all the 100 questions. You need to be smart and look at play according to your strengths, right? I always keep repeating this. Play according to your strengths. Know how much time you'll spend on each question depending on what your strength is, right? If this is not your strength, if jumble sentence is not your strength, as it is,